Hey-ho, creepy friends and weirdos, and welcome to the Strange Vibes Horror and Weird Fiction Podcast. I'm your sinister host, Sylvia. Tonight we celebrate the bizarre and uncanny with the conclusion of Waterfall by C Telander. You can catch part 1 in the May 3rd podcast. Then the intro from Much Drinking, Little Thinking about a journey into terror. After that, A Story of Angels by Paul Radcliffe, and a short by Brian Terrence that will leave you screaming with laughter. All links and author bios are in the description. Now, here's Alex. Enjoy.
The head the size of a crate nodded as it saw Albert's recognition. The plate-sized hand swung around and patted the open place next to it on the bench. It was the place Albert sat hundreds of times before without issue, without question. And just like that, the communication channels opened. The synapses and nerves worked again, and Albert recalled how to walk. He just didn't know why he was. Had his legs mounted a coup against his nervous system, enacted martial law, and were now calling the shots? Making the movements contrary to the cranial general in charge? He didn't know. What he did know was that he was walking towards Bigfoot, whose warm brown eyes watched him with kindness. It couldn't be anything else. Albert knew this, and while he still didn't know if Bigfoot would suddenly grab him, rip him in half, and toss him into the waterfall he'd appreciated for so long, he at least knew there was a chance Bigfoot didn't want to do any of this. Albert walked past the man of the forest and carefully sat on the bench, his backpack sliding off his shoulder with a familiarity that felt as comforting as sliding under the sheets and into bed at night. He sat there, trying his best not to make any sudden movements, to control his body parts at all costs. He knew how easily the giant tree of a creature next to him could tear him limb from limb if it wanted to. Then Althea appeared again. His dead wife was standing a few feet away from them, close to the edge. The waterfall did its thing, making it seem the water was falling on her. She was, of course, wet. It looked like she was drowning all over again. He had asked himself hundreds of times why he hadn't gone with her, to grab those few missing items for dinner. What difference would it have made? Would they have both died? He probably would have driven, but no one ever found out what happened on that bridge, what caused the crash and the plunge. It could have happened to him too. Althea didn't say anything this time, just stared at him. I can see her also. It sounded like logs rolling down a hill into the river. It was deep and booming, and he could feel the sound waves vibrate off his skin. Albert hesitantly turned his head to the left and looked at Bigfoot. It didn't turn to him, but kept looking in the direction of Althea. He could see her pale reflection in those dark brown orbs. She will not let you go, Bigfoot said. It waved its hand as if shooing away a fly. Albert whipped his head back and saw his wife was gone. There was just the waterfall, sending its liquid cargo from a great height. Did you do that? Did you make her go? Yes. She was making you unhappy, and we have matters to discuss. We do? Albert said. Now Bigfoot turned his head on that cantilever of a neck and looked right at him. Albert prepared himself for fear, but only saw warmth and compassion in those eyes, in that friendly face. Are you real? He asked in a bare whisper. The small smile on the Sasquatch's face grew, and like a crack wrenching open in the side of a tree, the smile widened and widened, and then this big thunder of a laugh erupted, and Albert actually felt tremors in the air around him. He couldn't help laughing also. The laughing continued, long and hearty, for a considerable amount of time. Albert even saw tears squeezing out of the sides of those big billiard ball eyes. A long while later, it calmed down and grew quiet. Albert had just been watching the waterfall, still chuckling to himself. I come here to write, he said, when there was silence between them. I know. I've been coming here for a long time. This place helps me, makes me focus. Watching this waterfall is so relaxing. There's nowhere I'd rather be when I want to work. I haven't said her name since it happened. since the accident. Not out loud. When Althea. When Althea died, this place wasn't the same for me anymore. It's taken time for me to feel comfortable here again. If I didn't have it, I think I would have killed myself. There was quiet again. He had never said this to anyone, never even fully admitted it to himself, that he'd actually contemplated suicide. He told himself he had no idea, but knew it couldn't be completely true. On some level, he always knew. The booming voice came again. I have been coming here over 100 suns and moons. I don't understand. Do you mean 100 days? It shook its head. We travel around the sun. The moon grows and shrinks. 100 times I have rested here. Before there was this. It patted the bench. How do you know the earth revolves around the sun? It smiled, gave a small shake of its head, as if this were a stupid, wasteful question to ask. I come here. I rest. I watch. The water flows always. Sometimes strong. Sometimes not so much. The animals, they are born. They grow. They die. Such is the way. The world was born. It grows old. It dies and changes. It is reborn. I have seen it many times over. Do you not grow old like everything else? It tipped its head at Albert. A fair question. I do, but slowly. Very slowly. Perhaps one day I shall die. Perhaps not. But I am the only one of my kind in these parts. I'm sorry. That must get very lonely. Albert looked at Bigfoot and saw that smile again grow and become a crater in that face, and then he was hit by the echoing laughter once more, pushed to the end of the bench. It didn't last as long this time. Bigfoot shook its head. No, silly man. I am surrounded by life. The creatures, they are many. They come and go. They live and die. And then there are the trees. As if it were a command, they both looked skyward and stared at the mighty redwoods standing above all else, defiant. Like me, they do not die. They grow and grow. There is fire, they burn. But they still live, and they grow. There is much water. It changes the land. But they still live. They grow. They are always here. Eternal, Albert said. I know not that word, but it means for always? Yes. A good word. A powerful word. Like the trees. Albert noticed for the first time his cheeks were wet. Now, you too must live. You grow old, much faster than I, but you are not dead. Not yet. You must live. Albert opened his mouth, then closed it. Opened to speak, but found no words and closed it again. His cheeks were starting to feel like they were beneath a waterfall. I can feel your hurt. You must make it go away, so you can live again. Look. Bigfoot pointed at the waterfall, then swept around, encompassing all the nature around them. Is it not the most beautiful? The most perfect? Albert nodded, not trusting his voice to make the right words. Did she ever see this? The brown tree trunk swung around again. Albert thought. Once. It was a bit of a climb for her, and she was really happy when we got here. We sat on this bench for a long time. It was wonderful. But that was a long time ago. I'd forgotten. Bigfoot just nodded. Albert wasn't sure if he understood everything he was saying, but it still comforted him. Good, he growled. Then he waved his hand up and down at the waterfall. Althea appeared before them, pale flesh and dead eyes. Albert steeled himself for what she would say, but she said nothing, just stared at him. He hated it. He felt himself growing angry. She is not here because of you. You are here because of her. I don't know what that means, Albert snapped, not breaking the stare down. You come here, not for writing, not for yourself. You come here for her, to make that time you two came, to make it again and again. It is what you crave. Now Albert didn't look at Bigfoot. He felt his mouth opening in disbelief. That was why he only ever saw Althea here and nowhere else. So how do I make this better? How do I fix it? I can't stand looking at her dead face when I'm here. Bigfoot looked at him. He tapped his long tree branch of a finger at his temple, then against Albert's temple. He thought it was going to be hard and maybe even painful. It was anything but, soft and warm. Then Bigfoot touched the center of its greeny-brown chest, and it looked more like a moss-covered rock. Then he touched Albert in the same place, his heart. It gave Albert a nod, then stood, turned, and walked up the mountain behind them, as effortlessly as if it was walking on flat ground. Albert watched it go, and as the distance grew, the harder it was to see the man of the forest, until there was nothing. Albert was alone again. No, he wasn't. Albert turned, and the ghost of his dead wife was still there, staring at him. He needed to fix this, but how? He watched her, studied her, could see the waterfall behind her, continuous and ever-flowing. Then a thought came to him. Albert stood and walked towards her. With a shaky hand, he reached out and took hers. It was cold and wet as he expected, like thawed meat. He forced himself to hold her hand tight and pulled her over to the bench. At first, she did not move, a tree with deep roots in the ground. Then she took a small step, then a bigger one. 4 or 5 more and she was by his side. With his other hand, he touched her forearm and brought her down onto the bench with him. He thought she might creak like a tree in a strong wind, yet there was no sound but the waterfall. Then she was sitting next to him. She was looking at him. He turned and gazed out at the waterfall. A short while later, from the corner of his eye, he saw her head move and look likewise. They stared at the beauty of nature, which had increased now that the sun was up and everything had a golden glow. Albert sat with his dead wife and never wanted the moment to end. After some time, he plucked up courage and turned his head. She looked just like the day he brought her here, long ago, as beautiful as everything around them. Everything turned blurry, and he blinked tears from his eyes. He looked back at the waterfall. He knew this moment wouldn't last forever. Nothing ever does. She would eventually move on, be gone. And all he would have were the memories, and her place in his heart, where she will remain until the day he died, which would not be soon. But for now, in this moment, in this time, they were together, and he would enjoy it for as long as humanly possible. Alex C. Telander is the mad scientist, creator, and writer of the ghoulish Ostium Podcast and the very gay Circe Podcast. Both podcasts are part of the Transylvanian fortress known as the Rusty Quill Network.
In this next story, Bulgarian sailor Zlatko struggles to come to grips with a terrifying vision. But why does his fellow crewman keep urging him to drink? Much Drinking, Little Thinking by Sergio Palumbo and Alessandro Lui. There are 5 reasons we should drink: good wine, a friend, or being dry, or lest we should be by and by, or any other reason why. Henry Aldrich. Drink up, the man named Sheriff Uflick on the other side of the desk told Zlatko. The crew member was about 10 years older than he was, and was practically bald, as if the wind of too many voyages across that stretch of water of the Black Sea had swept away his hair. There were no other members of the crew in the mess hall at that late hour, or so it seemed. You have to drink. Zlavko Artchev scratched his blue t-shirt and looked at the mallet-shaped bottle that stood before his eyes, and that seemed to have come out of the 1700s, being a full and very dark yellowish alcohol. Then the man stared at him and appeared thoughtful. Drink, as I said, the other man nodded. At times, being a bit drunk can help. There was a moment of deep silence, as Zlavko didn't reply at once. Then Sharov started talking again. I heard what you told me and what you said you saw down there in the engine room. I also know you're afraid, but this is a tale I've already heard, and I must say you're not the first one to get those fears. The much younger Zlavko, being only 29, raised his dark eyes and stared directly at the other man with a challenging glance. I'm certain there's something below in that part of the ship. It's something that shouldn't be there. It's not of this world, and it scares me. It really does. Sure thing. That is why I told you to come and drink. This is the best way, maybe the only way, to get past your fear. Sharov nodded in a knowing way. I said that you're not the first, and you will not be the last one. You must know that even our old Captain Schvelt went through the same thing a few years ago. Really? You mean even the captain saw it? The older man confirmed and smiled. Yes. And Gleb, too. Gleb, too. Zlavko's squint appeared unbelieving, as he really doubted that the tall, muscular Gleb Akromeyev, part of their crew, could be afraid of anything. The man was always said to solve his arguments with his obnoxious bad manners, and never missed the chance to show off how good at fighting he was, especially when it came to hand-to-hand combat. He had been a soldier in a disreputable army of mercenaries that had supposedly operated abroad before he came to this vessel to work more than 16 years ago. So the younger man considered the situation. He knew that there was courage in a bottle, as the saying went, and maybe this really was the best way to deal with his fears. He only had to drink the alcohol his fellow aboard had poured him. The young man saw before his eyes again those bloody teeth and the dark, unearthly figure he was certain he had found in the engine room, and that thought was just enough to make him deeply afraid also now. So, a pensive Zlavko drank his first glass and immediately savored the full-bodied wine of the bottle, unusual and very intense in flavor. He thought the fruity alcohol was made to a high-quality standard, though he'd never heard of that label before today. But he had never been much of a drinker, and he had never faced such fears in his life. Tune in next week for more of this thrilling tale. Have you ever heard of the Angel of Impatience? Here's one now.
Nugget meets the Angel of Impatience. Written and read by Paul Radcliffe. Everyone has heard of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and a glance at the news will confirm that they are open for bookings. Most people have heard of the Angel of Death, who is, for the most part, the definitive uninvited guest, and whose job description needs little explanation. However, very few have heard of the Angel of Impatience, who is, I suppose, the lower to middle management in what we might loosely term the celestial hierarchy, all working together and reminding the lower orders that there is no I in team. To help further understanding, you should realise that whether we like it or not, ghosts and angels are always watching. Under some circumstances, they can present themselves as ethereal or vague figures, barely glimpsed as the light fades. Nugget, having little interest in anything beyond his own reflection, did not know this, which proved ultimately to be unfortunate. To fully understand Nugget and the many like him, it is necessary to realise that nothing that happened to him was ever his fault. He had explained this to a variety of relatively minor courts, and some had been misguided enough to actually believe him. It was late at night, which wasn't Nugget's fault, and it wasn't Nugget's fault that the hospice back door was unlocked, nor was it his fault that the staff were busy and nobody saw him come in. He saw a passage of several rooms, and one of these rooms was lit by a dim red light, and the door was ajar, as luck would have it. As Nugget eased the door open, the slumped figure in the bed did not move. Nugget moved to the bedside locker and pulled open the top drawer. He pulled out a black leather wallet and turned. Easy. Game over. Except it wasn't. A word of explanation here. The afterlife is very busy. There are so many past lives to consider and so many sins to process and refer up the chain, as most of the angels called it, albeit quietly. And among the many shades that haunted the hospice, the angel of impatience drifted busily. An explanation here, an apology there, and mostly had a distant, if respectful, working relationship with the angel of death. However, he did have a few favours to call in from his busier colleague, and witnessing Nugget edge down the passageway, he saw the rain falling on the concrete steps that led to the unlocked door. Nugget slipped, we need not say why, and he lay on the loose gravel. Nugget had stolen a wallet from a dying man, and it is academic to mention it, but his lung cancer had made his way down a very empty freeway to his liver and his brain. His departure was imminent, and for the angel of death, relatively routine. Sad relatives, life examined, on to higher authority for what we would call a judgment call, quite literally. And the angel of impatience would explain the delays and location to the waiting ghosts. However, to witness the stealing of a wallet from the dying was something that warranted intervention, though the ultimate judgment will be left to those higher, up the chain again. The process could certainly be initiated by the lower ranks, and the angel of impatience explained Nugget's, shall we say, lack of foresight, and he made a simple request. At this stage, Nugget was lying at the foot of 5 or 6 concrete steps and looking rather puzzled at the bone protruding from his shin. He began to crawl towards the linked and rusted chains that marked the edge of the gravelled car park. It was 3 in the morning, and most of the lights in the hospice were extinguished. Nugget thought he heard a faint sound, perhaps a door opening, and he looked over his shoulder through the drifting rain. Now, Nugget was not a clever man. His world and his understanding of it was very limited, and he could not comprehend what he saw, perhaps 12 yards away. A tall figure, impossibly so, and spreading dark feathered wings that blocked what little light there was. The eyes glittered in a gaunt face, and the hands were claws, outstretched and mocking. Nugget forgot the pain of his broken shin. He was terrified in the true meaning of that overused word. He managed one syllable, the beginning of a question. Who? Before the figure reached forward and gently touched Nugget's shoulder. It is possible to die of fright. Nugget, and perhaps it is as well that he didn't know, had encountered Azrael, whose task it was, and always will be, to separate souls from bodies at the time of their mortal death. And he returned to his registers, leaving Nugget's pale body at the foot of the steps, soaking as the rain came down harder as if in judgment. And the angel of impatience hovered as Nugget's soul, or what passed for one, given how he'd lived his life, was entered in that dark register where we all, one day, will be neatly listed. There is no going back. The angel of impatience paused from reassuring and comforting the milling ghosts that were all his responsibility. He looked towards the bewildered, angry and frightened Nugget. A word of explanation again, but directed at Nugget. You are no longer alive. Here, we look at your mortal life and your actions. We do not judge or punish. We inform and we explain. Sad to say, you have lived a life uncaring of others and preying on what you will come to realise was very much your own small way. Small by comparison to others here in what some call the afterlife. We are what we do, and our actions follow us. Another of ultimate authority will judge you. I said we do not punish, and that is true. while you await final judgment. But others bear that responsibility, and I can assure you they are conscientious about their duties. Nugget looked around. The tall angel had vanished, and he had been speaking in what looked to Nugget like a long, polished hallway. There were doors on either side. Nugget walked down the passageway. He opened a door and stepped into one of the rooms that lay beyond them, and the door closed behind him, as in all the terrible horror films he had watched. And it did not open again. Nugget smelled something very like burning, and from far away there came a shriek, swiftly muffled. Nugget's name was in a register, like all of the dead, like yours will be one day. And no one knew when that ledger would finally be opened, so the punishment would go on. There are no calendars in eternity.
Finally, kick back and relax with a zany short about pirates.
The Earrings, written and narrated by Brian Terence. The ship bucked, and it felt as though the whole craft twisted in pain like a wounded animal. The captain and first mate stumbled onto the bridge, the captain leaning over the controls to try and see out of the cockpit window. How did they sneak up on us? There was no alarm, nothing. The first mate's voice was squeaky. He was on the verge of hysteria. Military stealth tech, nothing else is that good. In contrast to the first mate's, the captain's voice was almost emotionless. "They got a real warship on us, Captain," the first mate cried. "No, first mate, it's another pirate ship. I fear it's the Crow." Before the first mate could do anything other than swallow hard, there was a vibration felt through the floor. "All hands prepare for boarders, all hands prepare for boarders," the captain's voice sounded throughout the ship. Almost instantly they could hear the sounds of fighting, energy weapons being fired, the sounds of sizzling as the blasts struck flesh, the screams of dying men. All muffled through the heavy door. The bulkhead had sealed automatically. They could do nothing for the rest of the crew. At least they didn't have to smell the charred flesh. The two men could only stand and await their fate. There was a screeching and grinding, and the bulkhead door was slowly forced to one side. The corridor outside the door was crowded with armed men, the air hazy with smoke. Surprisingly, none of the men moved to enter the control room, but all stepped aside to allow a woman to stride purposefully into the room. She wore a skin-tight outfit that had the appearance of black feathers. They appeared to shimmer as the light struck them, but as much as the two men might have wanted to admire the woman's figure, staring at the iridescent material did weird things to the eye. It was her earrings, however, that captivated the first mate. He could only stare in revulsion. "Are they what I think they are, Captain?" he asked in a hushed tone. "Yep, that's all that's left of some poor sod," replied the captain sympathetically. The woman stopped and delicately flicked one of her earrings with a black painted fingernail. Looking at the captain, she said, "I always did have more balls than you, didn't I, Captain?" She managed to turn his rank into an insult with her tone. "Is she the Crow, Captain? Is she going to wear our balls as earrings?" the first mate asked, his voice trembling. The captain's voice sounded tired, resigned to his fate. "It's worse than that, first mate." The first mate's expression was one of disbelief. "She's my ex-wife."
Join us next Sunday, May 17th, for more tales of the mad, macabre, darkly comedic, or just plain weird. Until then, my friends, stay strange.